and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.
Good evening, everyone. It's a hard time, and everyone's feeling it in different ways. And I know a lot of folks are reluctant to tune into a political convention right now, or to politics in general. Believe me, I get that. But I am here tonight because I love this country with all my heart. And it pains me to see so many people hurting. I've met so many of you. I've heard your stories. And through you, I have seen this country's promise. And thanks to so many who came before me, thanks to their toil and sweat and blood, I've been able to live that promise myself. That's the story of America. All those folks who sacrificed and overcame so much in their own times because they wanted something more, something better for their kids. There's a lot of beauty in that story. There's a lot of pain in it too. A lot of struggle and injustice and work left to do. And who we choose as our president in this election will determine whether or not we honor that struggle and chip away at that injustice and keep alive the very possibility of finishing that work. I am one of a handful of people living today who have seen firsthand the immense weight and awesome power of the presidency. And let me once again tell you this: the job is hard. It requires clear-headed judgment, a mastery of complex and competing issues, a devotion to facts and history, a moral compass, and an ability to listen, and an abiding belief that each of the 330 million lives in this country has meaning and worth. A president's words have the power to move markets. They can start wars or broker peace. They can summon our better angels or awaken our worst instincts. You simply cannot fake your way through this job. As I've said before, being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. Well, a presidential election can reveal who we are too. And 4 years ago, too many people chose to believe that their votes didn't matter. Maybe they were fed up. Maybe they thought the outcome wouldn't be close. Maybe the barriers felt too steep, whatever the reason. In the end, those choices sent someone to the Oval Office who lost the national popular vote by nearly 3 million votes. In one of the states that determined the outcome, the winning margin averaged out to just 2 votes per precinct. 2 votes. And we've all been living with the consequences. When my husband left office with Joe Biden at his side, we had a record-breaking stretch of job creation. We'd secured the right to health care for 20 million people. We were respected around the world, rallying our allies to confront climate change. And our leaders had worked hand in hand with scientists to help prevent an Ebola outbreak from becoming a global pandemic. 4 years later, the state of this nation is very different. More than 150,000 people have died, and our economy is in shambles because of a virus that this president downplayed for too long. It has left millions of people jobless. Too many have lost their health care. Too many are struggling to take care of basic necessities like food and rent. Too many communities have been left in the lurch to grapple with whether and how to open our schools safely. Internationally, we've turned our back, not just on agreements forged by my husband, but on alliances championed by presidents like Reagan and Eisenhower. And here at home, as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black life matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. Because whenever we look to this White House for some leadership or consolation or any semblance of steadiness, what we get instead is chaos, division, and a total and utter lack of empathy. Empathy, that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The ability to walk in someone else's shoes. The recognition that someone else's experience has value too. Most of us practice this without a second thought. If we see someone suffering or struggling, we don't stand in judgment, we reach out. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It is not a hard concept to grasp. It's what we teach our children. And like so many of you, Barack and I have tried our best to instill in our girls a strong moral foundation to carry forward the values that our parents and grandparents poured into us. But right now, kids in this country are seeing what happens when we stop requiring empathy of one another. They're looking around wondering if we've been lying to them this whole time about who we are and what we truly value. They see people shouting in grocery stores, unwilling to wear a mask to keep us all safe. They see people calling the police on folks minding their own business just because of the color of their skin. They see an entitlement that says only certain people belong here. That greed is good and winning is everything, because as long as you come out on top, it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. And they see what happens when that lack of empathy is ginned up into outright disdain. They see our leaders labeling fellow citizens enemies of the state while emboldening torch-bearing white supremacists. They watch in horror as children are torn from their families and thrown into cages, and pepper spray and rubber bullets are used on peaceful protesters for a photo op. Sadly, this is the America that is on display for the next generation. A nation that's underperforming not simply on matters of policy, but on matters of character. And that's not just disappointing, it's downright infuriating. Because I know the goodness and the grace that is out there in households and neighborhoods all across this nation. And I know that regardless of our race, age, religion, or politics, when we close out the noise and the fear and truly open our hearts, we know that what's going on in this country is just not right. This is not who we want to be. So what do we do now? What's our strategy? Over the past 4 years, a lot of people have asked me, when others are going so low, does going high still really work? My answer, going high is the only thing that works. Because when we go low, when we use those same tactics of degrading and dehumanizing others, we just become part of the ugly noise that's drowning out everything else. We degrade ourselves. We degrade the very causes for which we fight. But let's be clear. Going high does not mean putting on a smile and saying nice things when confronted by viciousness and cruelty. Going high means taking the harder path. It means scraping and clawing our way to that mountaintop. Going high means standing fierce against hatred while remembering that we are one nation under God. And if we want to survive, we've got to find a way to live together and work together across our differences. And going high means unlocking the shackles of lies and mistrust with the only thing that can truly set us free, the cold hard truth. So let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is. Now, I understand that my message won't be heard by some people. We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I am a Black woman speaking at the Democratic Convention. But enough of you know me by now. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. You know I hate politics, but you also know that I care about this nation. You know how much I care about all of our children. So if you take one thing from my words tonight, it is this. If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election. If we have any hope of ending this chaos, we have got to vote for Joe Biden like our lives depend on it. I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith. He was a terrific vice president. He knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead our country. And he listens. He will tell the truth and trust science. He will make smart plans and manage a good team. And he will govern as someone who's lived a life that the rest of us can recognize. When he was a kid, Joe's father lost his job. When he was a young senator, Joe lost his wife and his baby daughter. And when he was vice president, he lost his beloved son. So Joe knows the anguish of sitting at a table with an empty chair, which is why he gives his time so freely to grieving parents. Joe knows what it's like to struggle, which is why he gives his personal phone number to kids overcoming a stutter of their own. His life is a testament to getting back up. And he is going to channel that same grit and passion to pick us all up, to help us heal and guide us forward. Now, Joe is not perfect, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But there is no perfect candidate, no perfect president. And his ability to learn and grow, we find in that the kind of humility and maturity that so many of us yearn for right now. Because Joe Biden has served this nation his entire life without ever losing sight of who he is. But more than that, he has never lost sight of who we are, all of us. Joe Biden wants all of our kids to go to a good school, see a doctor when they're sick, live on a healthy planet. And he's got plans to make all of that happen. Joe Biden wants all of our kids, no matter what they look like, to be able to walk out the door without worrying about being harassed or arrested or killed. He wants all of our kids to be able to go to a movie or a math class without being afraid of getting shot. He wants all our kids to grow up with leaders who won't just serve themselves and their wealthy peers, but will provide a safety net for people facing hard times. And if we want a chance to pursue any of these goals, any of these most basic requirements for a functioning society, we have to vote for Joe Biden in numbers that cannot be ignored. Because right now, folks who know they cannot win fair and square at the ballot box are doing everything they can to stop us from voting. They're closing down polling places in minority neighborhoods. They're purging voter rolls. They're sending people out to intimidate voters, and they're lying about the security of our ballots. These tactics are not new, but this is not the time to withhold our votes in protest or play games with candidates who have no chance of winning. We have got to vote like we did in 2008 and 2012. We've got to show up with the same level of passion and hope for Joe Biden. We've got to vote early, in person if we can. We've got to request our mail-in ballots right now, tonight, and send them back immediately, and follow up to make sure they're received, and then make sure our friends and families do the same. We have got to grab our comfortable shoes, put on our masks, pack a brown bag dinner, and maybe breakfast too, because we've got to be willing to stand in line all night if we have to. Look, we have already sacrificed so much this year. So many of you are already going that extra mile. Even when you're exhausted, you're mustering up unimaginable courage to put on those scrubs and give our loved ones a fighting chance. Even when you're anxious, you're delivering those packages, stocking those shelves, and doing all that essential work so that all of us can keep moving forward. Even when it all feels so overwhelming, working parents are somehow piecing it all together without childcare. Teachers are getting creative so that our kids can still learn and grow. Our young people are desperately fighting to pursue their dreams. And when the horrors of systemic racism shook our country and our consciences, millions of Americans of every age, every background rose up to march for each other, crying out for justice and progress. This is who we still are. Compassionate, resilient, decent people whose fortunes are bound up with one another. And it is well past time for our leaders to once again reflect our truth. So it is up to us to add our voices and our votes to the chorus of history, echoing heroes like John Lewis, who said, "When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something." That is the truest form of empathy. Not just feeling, but doing. Not just for ourselves or our kids, but for everyone, for all our kids. And if we want to keep the possibility of progress alive in our time, if we want to be able to look our children in the eye after this election, we have got to reassert our place in American history. And we have got to do everything we can to elect my friend Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Thank you all. God bless.
You think after that's a shut down the podcast moment. I can't do better than Michelle Obama. But anyway, I'm gonna give it a shot. Today's date, August 22nd, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Even though we do try to tone down our language, this still is, we still actually do show videos of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is still advised on that. But yeah, I could have wrapped the show up on that one. And I know that I apologize. The video did run a little bit long, but let's be honest. It's Mrs. Obama. I'm not going to stop that, especially when she spoke. She spoke so much truth at the Democratic National Convention that honestly, I thought that she might come out and sit there and say, "I'm going to run for president." Let's be honest. If Michelle Obama did run, Donald Trump would be very, very, very. Let's just say he'd be getting fitted for his prison jumpsuit right now. But thank you all for tuning in. I certainly appreciate it on this Saturday morning. I almost said Sunday, and like I said, I could have dang near just canceled. I could have just wrapped up the podcast on that and call it a night. But that's fine. Of course, I'm not going to do that. We still have some other news to get by. Of course, as you all know, the Democratic National Convention was this week with Joe Biden accepting the nomination as well as Kamala Harris accepting the VP nomination. And I have to say this about former President Obama. Y'all, this is a wonderful time. You know why? We get to see President Obama in his rawest form. Because keep in mind, if you hear him speak now, he doesn't hesitate when he speaks. When he speaks now, oh, it is beautiful. Much like he sat there and said when he gave his opinion about Dorito and his current presidency.
In the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously. That he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone, while those at the top take in more than ever. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before.
Joining us now is Laura Trump, President.
Okay, so of course, I love that about President Obama right now. Just for the simple fact of the matter is, now, because he's no longer president, because Lord knows we need him right now, he's being very honest. He said the same things that myself and multitudes of others have said about Doritos. Simply put, the man is more than unfit to be president. I think at this point we've already known that, especially if the last 4 years haven't proved anything. And it's funny where Michelle Obama has said it best. Our country cannot survive another 4 years with Trump, and that's exactly what Kelly said. Hey, Kelly, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching, honey. So it is interesting now, like I said, with the Democratic convention. The Republicans will have their convention eventually. And the first bit of news that you should understand is that the guests that are speaking there, first off, the doctor who said that hydrochloroquine works, the demon sperm doctor, she'll be there. The kid in the MAGA hat who smirked as the Native American was protesting his face, he'll be there. And you know who else will be there? These people. You know, the ones that were at the St. Louis couple that had guns pointed at Black Lives Matter protesters? Yeah, they're speaking. Unfortunately, the names of them, Patricia and Mark McCloskey, who pointed their guns at protesters earlier this summer, will be speaking at the Republican National Convention. Y'all, come on now. Let's think about this for a second. Keep in mind, their claim to fame is they sat there and said that they were afraid that protesters were going to loot their home, even though the protesters themselves were literally going to the mayor's house to protest police injustice. Unfortunately, because they believe they lived in a gated community, which I guess was more of the private area, decided that they wanted to go ahead and sit there and say, oh, well, we think you guys are going to loot us because this is a private street, which there's no such things as private streets. You might have locked communities, but the streets aren't private. But anyway, let's be honest, they saw black people in droves and they immediately grabbed their guns, looking like an old-ass couple out of a 1980s movie that just simply does not go away. But yes, those people have been invited to speak at the Republican National Convention. keep in mind, let's be honest about the Republican National Convention. It is a bunch of clowns, celebrities, and overnight sensations. Don't believe me? Look at Diamond and Silk. If it weren't fired, they'll be there. Those 1776 light-skinned twins that love Trump, I'm sure they're going to be there. But like I said, with that couple there, you are basically saying, I said, this is the reason why I kind of respect the Republican Convention. The Republican National Convention just shows how systemically racist, whitest, and pretty much the Republican National Convention is literally the definition of white privilege. Just saying, the actual definition. I sure as hell don't vote Republican. I come down the Democrats just as hard as come down the Republicans. But let's be honest, the Republicans are white privilege in human definition. There's just no way I could put that. But anyway, moving right along, guys. I have to promote this story because I still think, after all said and done, this was still possibly a smack on the wrist.
Actress Lori Loughlin was sentenced to 2 months in federal prison today for paying $500,000 to create fake athletic profiles to get her 2 daughters into USC. Her husband, Massimo Giannulli, sentenced to 5 months. The couple also fined $400,000, the judge telling Loughlin he was dumbfounded by her actions.
Okay, so anybody doesn't remember, that was the Operation Varsity Blues. You know, those parents that turned around and paid fixer buku bucks to get their kids in certain schools. How Lori Loughlin was always sitting there denying the charges, saying that she did not pay to get her 2 daughters into USC. We come to find out she did. And this is after a year. Now, after a year of all this said and done, multiple parents have been going down. So you've seen some. I think one parent got 1 year in jail. I think another parent got 8 months in jail. The cornerstone of this story got 2 months. Her husband got 5 months, which tells me he probably took the bigger charges. She probably took an accessory to the crime. The problem is what happens with their children, because you got your children into USC on fake credentials. Does that mean that USC is going to take back said credentials from said kid? Does that mean that said kid can no longer, if they're still at USC, are they still enrolled? And if they're, if they got degrees, are they gonna be retrieved or pulled or discredited? See, a lot of that. That's why a lot of that bothers me. Because again, Lori Loughlin, or Aunt Becky from Full House, however you want to call her, she is the definition of white privilege. Think about that for a second. Where else can you sit there, scam to get your kid into a school that they're probably not ready to get, at the same time, you get caught basically paying to get your kid into school, and you barely do and you're not even, let's be honest, she's not going to do 2 months in jail. I guarantee it's going to be knocked down in the house. I guarantee it's going to be knocked down to house arrest. I guarantee it. Only because had Lori Loughlin been black, she would have got years. Yes, I said it. If Lori Loughlin was black and a black woman did exactly what she did, which she did do, there was a black woman that actually used the address of her babysitter to get her kid into a somewhat better school district, and they came at her with 5 to 7 years. Not months, 5 to 7 years, for wanting to make sure, because of the dire situation she was in, that she took drastic measures such as falsifying a home address just for the kid to get into a better school. And this is not nothing new. Many parents in that situation have sat there and used addresses to get their kids into better schools. It's not a new thing. Trust me, it's been going around since my age and beyond that. So it's interesting now where I say with Lori Loughlin only getting 2 months, that is the definition of white privilege, especially when a black mom does the same thing, they throw years at her. So please don't sit there and tell me white privilege doesn't exist. They had one damn good lawyer. They really did. But then again, they also had money too, and in California, so take it as you will. But moving right along, guys, Postmaster General has some explaining to do, just because, again, like I said, like I saw about in my previous podcast, where Dorito is taking on the U.S. mail, basically because at this point, our election may be looking like a lot of mail-in ballot voting, which honestly should be allowed. We're still having very few polling places. Coronavirus is actually going to keep a lot of people at social distancing. This is why I sit there and say before I play the story, guys, first and foremost in this election, please vote. There is no excuse. Now, there's a such thing as early voting. Now, if you're like me, I do early voting. Like if I want to beat the crowds, if I want to do this, that, and other, keep in mind they usually keep voting early voting open for 2 weeks. So, and most places are open on Saturday because I know you don't want to choose between having to decide if you want to go to work or you want to go vote. But I understand that. I mean, I could sit there and go over the whole thing about how the election day should be a national holiday, how we should be expanding on mail-in voting, how we should be expanding opening polls, how we should be, hiring more in our electoral commissions, how we should be investing more in our technology, that we shouldn't just be looking at voter boxes and things of that nature. We should be looking towards smartphone apps and things of that nature. Been down that line, and I'm never going to stop talking about it because those are the things that are actually going to improve our elections. And then, getting rid of the Electoral College because it's pretty much an outdated system that really doesn't help us right now because we actually have a large enough population to where we should go by a popular vote. I will keep saying that. I keep saying the whole time about the Electoral College. One day I am going to go into the Electoral College and actually explain why it's outdated, at the same time why we should go by a popular vote now, and the fact of the simple fact of the matter of the excuses they use to actually keep the Electoral College. But above all else, guys, like Michelle Obama said before I go into the Postmaster General story, please vote. At this point, I love the fact when she sat there and says, when they go low, do we still go high? And she says, yes, we still need to. And I keep saying to myself and I keep saying the whole entire time, Michelle Obama is honestly not the vice president we need, but the president we need on many levels. Now, I understand Miss Obama does not like politics. She does not want to run. This woman has done more in 8 years as a first lady than most presidents have done in their first term. I understand that. I just wish she would change her mind. Oh, hey, Kels. Yes, early voting is the way. Early voting begins in October, and yes, every voting place will be open on Saturday as well. Thank you, Kels. Because I know Kels, I know where she works. She'll definitely have a lot more information on that than I will. But anyway, getting back to the U.S. mail, again, Trump is attacking the mail only because he understands that because he does mail-in voting, he doesn't want everybody else to mail-in voting. So he's sending his personal lackey, new Postmaster General, to make some changes in which he got grilled by Congress about.
Postmaster General in the hot seat today over those delays in delivering the mail, the changes at the post office. He was asked if he spoke with President Trump about changes in the U.S. Postal Service and what he's saying is causing the slowdown, and can he promise every ballot will be delivered in time to be counted in this presidential election? Here's our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, tonight.
President Trump today again raised dark and unsubstantiated fears about mail-in voting.
You're not going to be able to know the end of this election, in my opinion, for weeks, months, maybe never.
But the president said this just after the Postmaster General assured Congress election mail will be secure and on time.
This sacred duty is my #1 priority between now and Election Day.
Louis DeJoy firmly rejected accusations from some Democrats that he is sabotaging the upcoming election.
The insinuation is, quite frankly, outrageous.
He acknowledged with mail volume down, some sorting machines and blue mailboxes have been removed since he became Postmaster General 67 days ago, part of a long-standing trend. Democrats demanded to know whether DeJoy, a Trump mega donor, was doing the bidding of the president.
Did you discuss those changes, or are there a potential impact on the November election with the president or anyone at the White House? And remind you, you're under oath.
I have never spoken to the president about the Postal Service other than to congratulate me when I accepted the position.
In stark contrast to the president, the Postmaster General said he favors mail-in voting and has voted himself by mail for years. His advice to those wanting to be sure their vote is counted: vote early. He said it twice, David. Vote early.
Okay, so let me point this out before I go to the next part. Because again, this is them saying that, of course, he is a Trump. Now, you heard the key part in that. He's a Trump donor. Just much like Betsy Davos. Betsy Davos donated to the Trump campaign, and now, unfortunately, she's the Secretary of Education and doing a very shitty job about it. Now the funny part is, again, another donor to the Trump campaign is now the Postmaster General of by far one of the largest mail sorting organizations in the United States. We should be very concerned. Even though when he sat there and said, I'm not doing the bidding of the president, but I am actually wanting to make changes. Here are those changes.
Louis DeJoy is set to testify before Congress in just a few minutes. The Postal Service is under increased scrutiny ahead of the 2020 election, now just 74 days away. You can see the Capitol there as we await for that hearing to start. Now, with more mail-in voting expected, lawmakers are concerned that DeJoy's cost-cutting measures could affect ballot delivery. ABC's Devin Dwyer joins me now with more on this. Devin, what can we expect from this hearing this morning?
Hey, Diane, good morning. Well, this will be the first time that we hear from Postmaster General Louis DeJoy since he took the job and announced those controversial changes and all this concern that's been stirred up about the reliability of mail-in voting with some delivery delays that have been caused. Here are some of the biggest changes to the U.S. Postal Service that are causing so much concern. You know, he did a shakeup last month of leadership at the agency, a hiring freeze, moved some sorting machines around. But of course, the most controversial have been the elimination there, as you see, of the
Okay, I'm going to stop this right there because that's what I wanted people to see. This was his changes that he made to the U.S. Reassign nearly 24 top leaders, restructure operations, hiring freeze, planned removal of mail sorting machines, eliminated second trips and unnecessary overtime to keep deliveries on schedule, and end prioritization of election mail. Y'all. And he keeps in mind, he said that none of this has went into effect yet. This is his changes to the United States Postal Service system. I mean, restructured operations for all of those that's never worked in corporate. For everybody that's never worked in corporate America before, when you hear the words restructuring operations, that means that they're cutting a lot of jobs. Hiring freeze, which means they're going to prevent a lot of people from being hired. Planned removal of mail sorting machines means delayed operations because machines. For anybody that's never been inside of a postal service or FedEx or UPS or anything of that nature, the machines are actually set up to where they sort mail to different zones. Those zones actually go into different deliveries and therefore and such. That's what the machines are for, because they actually speed up time of you actually receiving mail. Without those machines, it is going to be longer times to get your mail because it takes longer to hand sort. And again, the elimination of secondary trips and unnecessary overtime means that they're gonna restrict everybody to a set schedule, and then whatever can be done with that time will be done, and if not, it'll be done next day. Again, delays your mail. And then the last part, which honestly should make a little people disturbed, is the prioritization of election mail. Keep in mind, election mail actually has its own priority inside the United States Postal Service system. When voting happens, election mail is kind of treated like priority overnight, to give you an idea, which means it goes straight to whatever polling place it's meant to go to. It's almost like an express. And that's the reason why mail-in voting is getting counted in as soon as humanly possible, just because there was overtime and second trips that actually allowed that to happen. And now that this United States Postal General, who's recently been appointed by Trump, and keep in mind, recently, this isn't new. The guy hasn't been there for a year. This guy has only been in his job for less than 60 days. Less than 60 days. This man has just got appointed to the post office. And now he's actually putting in plans to slow down the post office. Why? For the simple fact of the matter, again, mail-in voting is about to become a very big thing. And I've been saying this the entire time, guys. Trump needs the presidency more than you need things in your life from the president. Because I said it before in the previous podcast, this man is fighting so many fronts on so many battles that without the presidential power, he and his entire family will be in jail and probably under the jail. But here's also another thing that I found out this week that kind of ticked me off, and it had to do with Flint, Michigan. And I was really hoping for some good news for Flint, Michigan, considering that the children and everybody else has been affected by the corroded water system up there. You'd think I would get some better news, but well, I'll let you be the judge.
Breaking overnight here in this country, a massive settlement in Flint, Michigan over the water crisis. The state will pay Flint residents $600 million. 80% of that is earmarked for children hurt by the crisis. The contamination began in 2014 when the city changed its water supply. Researchers found high levels of lead in the water after residents started complaining of health concerns.
$600 million. More than $500 million is set aside for the families that were affected by the water in Flint, Michigan. And I don't know about y'all, that's not enough. I mean, the pipes still aren't fixed. They're still on the very same water supply they switched to. There's still cases of kids that were affected by high levels of lead in the drinking water, as well as adults. $600 million is not enough. There needs to be some restitution. I kept saying the entire time, it is amazing how not one person in the entire legislation for the state of Michigan is not being brought up on charges of crimes against humanity. I find that amazing, that because the majority of people in Flint, Michigan are minority, they are, and that they were affected, that for the simple fact of the matter, there's not one legislator, no politician that's seeing charges or lost their jobs because it needs to happen. Because yes, giving them money is one thing, but also at the same time, the problem still isn't fixed. And giving them money to cope with the changes and the medical bills that may follow, yeah, that's always a good thing. But it still say $600 million is not enough. Especially so the fact of the matter is, we don't know how far the damage extends, and it still may be extending out there. But again, I shouldn't be surprised because, like I said, yet not one politician's in jail. And that's honestly, forget my language, fucked up. But moving right along, guys, there was another person that who was one of Trump's very smart and intelligent people. He might actually be fitted for a jump sit soon, unless Trump pardons him. And this was the guy that reminds me of every bad guy from every Lifetime movie.
Chief and top White House strategist Steve Bannon, taken into custody from a 150-foot yacht to face charges of defrauding donors to a campaign to build the border wall. Bannon is the sixth closest Trump associate to be indicted for a felony, joining former campaign chair Paul Manafort, deputy campaign chair Rick Gates, political advisor Roger Stone, longtime attorney Michael Cohen, and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Chief White House correspondent John Carl has the story. Good morning, John.
Good morning, George. Steve Bannon is calling the charges against him a fiasco. He has pleaded not guilty, but these are serious allegations against the president's former chief strategist, accused of ripping off hundreds of thousands of people, most, if not all of them, almost certainly Trump supporters.
Overnight, Steve Bannon appeared defiant as he emerged from a New York courthouse after pleading not guilty to charges of money laundering and fraud. Bannon was arrested while aboard this $28 million luxury yacht owned by an exiled Chinese billionaire off the coast of Connecticut. Bannon ran Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2016 and went to the White House as his chief strategist. He and three others are accused of defrauding hundreds of thousands of people, allegedly profiting off a scheme to raise money to help build President Trump's promised wall on the Mexican border.
Build that wall! Build that wall!
With a group called We Build the Wall, Bannon and the others raised $25 million, promising to build a section of the wall themselves and offering donors a brick with their names on it.
You're not going to last forever, but your brick will.
This is a fundraising video of the group from February 2019.
It's really the heart of the Trump movement. I think it's one of the reasons, if not the reason, that Donald Trump's president of the United States.
The group was founded by Brian Kolfage, an Air Force vet who lost 3 limbs in Iraq. In fundraising pitches, he insisted every penny raised would go to the wall.
Everyone who donates right now, your money goes towards this wall. 100% of your money goes towards the wall. It's not going to line someone's pocket. I'm taking $0 of the salary, no compensation. It's going towards the wall.
The indictment alleges Kolfage himself used hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for personal expenses, including home renovations, payment towards a boat, a luxury SUV, a golf cart, jewelry, cosmetic surgery, personal tax payments, and credit card debt. The indictment alleges Bannon himself used hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for his own expenses. President Trump called the charges very sad and downplayed his connections to Bannon, who he fired 3 years ago.
I feel very badly. I haven't been dealing with him for a long period of time.
The president said he never liked the Build the Wall campaign.
When I read about it, I didn't like it. I said, this is for government, this isn't for private people. And it sounded to me like showboating.
But the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., promoted the project at an event last year, saying it is exactly the kind of thing the private sector should be doing.
This is private enterprise at its finest, doing it better, faster, cheaper than anything else. And what you guys are doing is pretty amazing.
In a statement, Donald Trump Jr. said that other than the speech, he never supported the project and said if the allegations are true, quote, the group deserves to be held accountable.
Bannon has been released on $5 million bail. His travel is restricted to the New York and D.C. areas. And Cecilia, he is also not allowed to travel on private jets or yachts.
I don't know about y'all. If there was ever a movie, and I point this out, this whole thing sounds like a Martin Scorsese movie right now, and I mean like Goodfellas, The Irishman. All those mafia movies where they make sure that they want you to believe something, but on the flip side of it, they're making money off of you. And we actually shouldn't be surprised at this point that Steve Bannon, like I said, reminds me of every bad guy from a Lifetime movie, or just every guy that looks like his liver is failing. Of course, was captured on a $1 million yacht. What screams? What James Bond villain screams? You arrest me on a yacht. You didn't arrest me at home. You didn't arrest me out and about. You had to come out on a boat to get me off a boat. If that does not scream anything, I don't know what does. I don't know if that screams bad guy to me, but it does. And like I said, Steve Bannon is honestly, again, this long line of Trump administrative folks who Trump says, I only pick the very best people. Yes, you do. You pick the very best people that actually be fitted for a jumpsuit, and you're about to join them. So, again, Steve Bannon, like I said, I know what you guys are thinking. Well, this could be another Roger Stone situation. Roger Stone was convicted of lying to federal prosecutors for trying to circumvent the Russia investigation. And Trump, at the end of it all, when he was supposed to serve 9 years, Trump pardoned him. So I can see people sitting there going the whole time, well, let's keep Trump from pardoning him. I'll be honest with you, Trump pardoning Roger Stone just makes him look guilty. And if Trump pardoned Steve Bannon, at this point, he is all but directed to go to the prison, to go to the jailhouse at that point. But Steve Bannon, Donald Trump Jr., and these other people that were invested with building the wall, in which all the proceeds they used. So you're going to sit there and tell me that a whole bunch of people claiming to do something actually swindle people out of their money in order to actually to fill up their own pockets and actually make themselves rich? That's terrible. Somewhere there's a couple of mega preachers doing this. There's gonna be some people that hate me for that joke. But again, I'm not surprised about that. The build a wall thing was true. And also, there's one name that didn't mention, Marsha Blackburn. Yeah, that bitch. She was the one promoting about the build a wall too, and she should go down for fraud. But then again, Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee. Yay. Again, whoever, like I said, I didn't vote for the bitch, and pardon my phrase on that, but I didn't vote for the bitch, but apparently someone else did. A lot of white people did. But we're going to move right along because, like I said, that story is still ongoing. And whether or not that Dorito does pardon him will be interesting to watch. That also being said, guys, Kamala Harris did speak at the Democrat National Convention as she accepted the nomination for vice president. I was a little bit worried about what she said she would do because, like I said before, I was more concerned about Kamala Harris because before I get into what she said, I was more concerned about, and I said this last podcast, Kamala Harris was not my first choice. I still think there are many other women of color who could have been better candidates and still would have been able to cross the divide between Joe Biden and the minority, a minority in the minority vote. I don't think Kamala Harris was it, because of her showing when she tried to run for president, and you saw her performance in the Democratic debates, and you saw her lack of policy because she shifted from liberal to progressive to moderate to centrist and all the way back again. She never stuck to anything. So that's why I sat there and said I'm a little concerned. Now, do I think that she is capable of doing the job? Yes, I think she's more than capable of doing the job. Do I have complete faith that she will? That's the problem I have. But at the same time, I've said this before, she's a lot better option than Trump and Pence. So I will still vote for Kamala Harris. I will still vote for Joe Biden, but I will hold their feet to the fire just because, like I said, I don't have confidence in her vice presidency. I don't, even though I know she's capable. But here's the reason why I say it, because a lot of people are going, well, that doesn't make any sense, Will, because you'll vote for her, but you're not sure of her ability. Well, I know she's better than Pence, because Pence ain't done shit. And I apologize for saying shit, but let's be honest, Pence ain't done shit. Except smile like a serial killer and talk about his mother, like a 40-year-old virgin. But the reason why I bring up Kamala Harris is just that, well, she does say some plans that she talked about at the Democratic National Convention, where she sat there and said she supports the idea of a $2,000 monthly stimulus check during the pandemic. Which, again, was not the first one. Bernie Sanders did sit there and say that from Jump Street before the pandemic really started to hit. What she talked about actually giving $2,000 per month, which, again, Bernie Sanders has already said. She has sat there and said that initially she supported Medicare for All, which was a plan that she and also Bernie Sanders co-signed, but she actually backpedaled out of. Because, like I said, Medicare for All is still misunderstood by a lot of people, but she decided that she wants to introduce a hybrid medical plan that would include a public Medicare option while still letting for-profit insurers compete. Here is the problem with that, guys. I have been saying this, and I'm just going to do a quick blurb about this. In order for our healthcare to get better, we have to understand that at this point, healthcare is nothing more than a for-profit system. And if healthcare is a for-profit system in which they have influence over their laws, what they can and can't do, and they can lock out certain drug markets like Mexico, Canada, and even overseas, if they have the ability to set their own prices, which means they can set to whatever they want, and they're not held to a standard, this is why for-profit health companies are terrible when you want to have decent health care across the board for your citizens. Yes, I said it. The reason why healthcare is so terrible in the U.S. is because it's a profit system. And that alone says a lot. Now, Bernie Sanders did say Medicare for All would eliminate for-profit insurers. But at the same time, everybody's covered. Yes, you would pay a little bit more in taxes, but at the same time, you would not be paying more on the end of going to a hospital, of going to a certain doctor, of going for office visits, co-pays, medicines, things of that nature. You would be paying a little bit more in taxes, but we already pay more in taxes. So if you told me I had to pay a little bit more in taxes in order for our health care to be 100 times better than what we have, I'll gladly pay it. Every other country has done it. And I would expect that Kamala Harris would pick up that because, again, she co-signed the bill that Sanders jumped on. And then she realized, well, if I support Medicare for All, then I'm not gonna get elected. Because, again, there's a lot of people out there that don't understand healthcare and don't understand Medicare for All and how it would work. Because unfortunately for healthcare systems with large populations, a single payer system is the only way to make it work. Because aside from that, you're still going to be paying, excuse me, I want to sneeze for a second. You're still going to be paying, anywhere from $80 to $200 for a copay visit. You still might be paying anywhere from $90 to $100 and up for your medicines, or even more for your 90-day supplies, especially if you get your medicine by mail. You can still be paying more to see a specialist. You can be paying buku bucks for a pregnancy, having your child in the hospital, or having surgery. I mean, go down the line. It can get worse. And then finally, what she also says She wanted to do an increase on Wall Street, which means that taxes will be taxed at 0.2% or $2 for every $1,000 traded, and bond trades will be taxed at half that. Now it's not as much as it should be, but again, this is Wall Street, and I keep on saying this. The only way to truly affect Wall Street is to get the money out of politics. That's the only way that's going to work. Just because if Wall Street still has influence over Congress through PACs and things of that nature, then, putting taxes on them really doesn't mean shit, because the tax law can still be wrapped around to where they can write off as a write-off. And then she goes into housing affordability, where she proposed a tax credit for renters paying more than 30% of their income in rent and utilities. So, a tax credit for renters paying more than 30% of their income in rent and utilities. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure that's about 80% of the U.S. right now, or more. Because it's still only, but again, as nice as that is, it still only addresses half the problem. Why is the fact that rent is still, that subsidizing rent and things of that nature are still driving cost up? Why are investors and those and realtors that actually have those homes still allow for pricing to go up and your paycheck hasn't changed? That's why I said that with the housing affordability plan she wants to put forward, it doesn't make any sense, because again, it needs to be tweaked on that. And then finally, she talked about income and taxes, in which she said she supported a national $15 an hour minimum wage, which again, I still sit there and say, and then she talks about reversing all the tax cuts that Trump has put in. Now, I'll give her that part. Reversing the tax cuts that Trump has put in would definitely help out a lot. However, $15 an hour, I think it's a nice gesture. But like I pointed out a couple podcasts ago, the minimum wage hasn't changed since 2009. It is still $7.25. $7.25 11 years later. The minimum wage is supposed to increase with a rise of productivity in the U.S., which means that in 2020, the minimum wage in 2020 should be $20.94 right now. If Kamala Harris tomorrow sat there and said that we need to push the minimum wage effective immediately as of next year to $20.94, you would get a lot more support, because that is the more accurate number versus $15 an hour. Because at $20.94 an hour, you actually can't afford to stay at these places, because then our paychecks would match the rise of production. Because let's be honest, our paychecks haven't changed in 11 years, but everything else has went up. Figure that one out. And then she talked about her, the LIFT, or Livable Incomes for Families Today, Middle Class Tax Act, which she did introduce back in her presidency, but really didn't actually get a lot of steam. It didn't gather a lot of steam, which the plan back at the time was that she would basically do a tax credit up to $6,000 for households with annual income under $100,000, which means that pretty much if you're a family of at least 3 or more and you have your annual income's under $100,000, you would get an additional $6,000 more on your tax returns every year. It is a nice gesture, but it needs to be more. That's why I'm sitting there thinking to myself, as I was reading over those, it just felt like Kamala Harris was testing the waters. It's like, let me throw this out there and see how it feels. Y'all don't like that? Nope. Okay, we're gonna take that back. It's and I don't mean to be the pessimist. I don't. Some of her policies that she's put forward, okay, I can dig those, but more needs to be done. And as progressive, for me being a progressive person, I'm going to demand more out of her, because I'm like, oh, these are nice, but you need to put you sat there and said you're going to get the job done. We need you to actually put more forward on this, and not just sit there and tell us, oh, well, we're going to do this, we'll do a little bit of this. You're half-assing. We don't need half-assing. Half-assing will be a step up from what we got in the White House right now. What we need to do is somebody that's going to sit there and say, this is what needs to get done, and things of that nature, because the way this presidency is, the election is shaping up, we might actually have an all-blue Senate and an all-blue House of Representatives and a Democratic presidency, which again, this will be the first time, if it all works out, Democrats will have the presidency, the House, and the Senate, which means that you should be able to get a lot more done in your first term than Dorito did in his first 4 years. But again, we'll see. But this is what I stand and say with Kamala Harris, and you guys can tell me in the comments as well. Do y'all believe that Kamala Harris is doing enough, or is she just simply right now testing the waters to see how people would affect it? Because this is why I said it's her problem. Her problem is, again, there's no connection with minorities. The plans and policies don't seem to reflect that. And especially since she's an AKA sorority sister, you think that half these fraternities and sororities would be going out there hitting the pavement for this woman. I'm going to be honest. I did a lot of searching so far. Nothing. I'm a little concerned by that. But anyway, take it as you will. If you guys see AKAs come out there and support Kamala Harris, please let me know, because I ain't been able to find spit. But that also being said, guys, there is one thing I did want to point out that Joe did say, and I kind of have to give him credit on this for the simple fact of the matter. Joe Biden sat there and said, he talked about, I am prepared to do whatever it takes to save lives because we cannot get the country moving until we control the virus. That is the fundamental law of this administration is thinking to begin with. In order to keep the country running and moving and the economy going and the people employed, you have to fix the virus. You have to deal with the virus. And if scientists said it was necessary to shut down the country, I'm sorry, let me repeat that again. And if scientists said it was necessary to shut down the country to do so, Biden said, I would shut it down. I would listen to the scientists. Now, keep in mind, he sat there and said something that a lot of people, when they hear the word shut down the country, immediately feel like their rights are being threatened, not understanding that he's talking about, just overall what every other country has done, and not really in terms of shutting down their country, but keeping businesses closed, people quarantined, the simple time of the matter, allowing the virus to run its course. The same things that every other country has done and now seem to be going back to normal, and yet we still haven't learned our lesson? Yeah. So again, Biden said if they said to shut the country down, I would do so as president. And of course, Dorito had something to say about that.
He prepares to seize the convention spotlight next week. The president is panning rival Joe Biden and the Democrats' primetime performance.
The Democrats held the darkest and angriest and gloomiest convention in American history. Where Joe Biden sees American darkness, I see American greatness.
But Biden last night spoke out against fear and anger, offering a largely optimistic vision.
If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I'll be an ally of the light, not the darkness.
Instead, President Trump today delivering an ominous warning about violent mobs overtaking U.S. cities if the Democrats prevail.
I'm the only thing standing between the American dream and total anarchy, madness, and chaos.
The Democratic ticket celebrating their virtual convention with fireworks over a socially distanced drive-in party. Biden never mentioned President Trump by name and promised to unify a divided country.
While I'll be a Democratic candidate, I will be an American president.
And he offered words of compassion to those affected by coronavirus, drawing on his own grief, the deaths of his first wife and daughter years ago, and his eldest son, Beau, in 2015.
I know that deep black hole that opens up in the middle of your chest and you feel like you're being sucked into it. Your loved one may have left this earth, but they'll never leave your heart.
Facing a series of crises over the pandemic, the economy, racial injustice, and climate change, Biden said the November election will be life-changing.
This will determine what America is going to look like for a long, long time. Character is on the ballot. Compassion is on the ballot. Decency, science, democracy, they're all on the ballot.
Because of the pandemic, Joe Biden has no plans to hit the road for a traditional post-convention tour. For his part, President Trump's expected to travel to North Carolina on Monday, where the official portion of the Republican convention kicks off.
Tara, did you know Geico is now offering an extra 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies?
Wow.
Oh, don't need that. Of course, if you got Geico, I guess you're covered. But yes, I mean, it's interesting to where Trump, again, well, Trump's going to take every chance he can to attack somebody. And he was no different attacking Biden, especially about calling him the worst of the worst. And also, you got to be a pretty... I'm trying to find a nice way of saying this without cussing. Like I said, I'm trying to work on my cuss on the show. You have to be highly, highly full of yourself to sit there and tell people, I am the only thing standing between the American dream and total anarchy. It's me. I was like, what? You know what? What kind of Kanye-fueled confidence do you think you have in that situation? And it goes to, it's funny where, again, Trump talks about, well, if I'm not elected, violent mobs will be out in the streets. Well, we've seen what happened when you have violent mobs out in the streets, sir. You go hiding. And at the same time, you hid from protesters who were not violent, but you went to your bunker anyway. So take that with a grain of salt. So again, it's interesting what they say about Trump again. Like I said, he's fighting a war on many fronts. Even more so that he's still fighting. And like I said, this goes back to what I said about him needing the presidential seat on so many waves. Protecting his tax cuts, protecting his tax returns, protecting him against sexual harassment suits. Yes, those are still out there. Protecting against Manhattan and the Manhattan district attorneys from getting his tax returns. Oh, and let's not also forget, he can never go outside the U.S. anymore because now the ICC has crimes, war against humanity crimes for him, the same way they have against Bush Jr. Because that's the reason why Bush Jr. will never leave the country. Because if he ever was, he could be brought up on crimes. And again, Trump has now entered into that private circle of American presidents that will never leave the country just because if they ever did wind up overseas, could wind up in The Hague. But again, like I said, Trump needs this more than anyone else. And even more so, and here's the thing about this, as he moves forward talking about the American dream, watch this video and see if you feel different.
I'm Antonia Hilton. For decades, Black Americans have struggled to achieve high rates of homeownership due to redlining and blatant discrimination. But now, in cities like Chicago, a new generation of Black residents are finding that even with a good education and careful savings, high levels of student loan debt disqualify them from the American dream. Nayela Malone and her youngest of two sons, Timothy, live together in a rented apartment in Bronzeville, Chicago.
Why don't you put a trash bag in?
But they're looking for a permanent home.
I usually look at some houses and see if anything new is on the market.
They'd love to have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, some space for their puppy Bruce to run around.
Here's one that I would be interested in.
But as fun as it is to search for their first house online, reality hasn't been pretty.
The second bathroom is also important to me.
She's a therapist and runs her own private business, but has $130,000 in student loans, and lenders keep rejecting her.
We're gonna plan it out, worst case scenario, I'll start again in January. How was school today?
School?
Oh.
To Mom! Every week, they go see potential homes.
Let's see, I think it's over here.
She's been turned down for mortgages which cost substantially less than her current rent. Lenders steer her away from the areas with the best resources and schools, but she doesn't want to buy in an area that experiences heavy policing or violence.
The best thing about Hyde Park is the neighborhood, right? Uh-huh. And you can come out and walk roofs.
According to a new NBC News analysis, there's a 34.6% homeownership gap between white and Black Chicagoans. Chicago has a long history of redlining and housing discrimination, and that legacy is coming to a head with the contemporary student debt crisis. Black Americans inherit far less family wealth and property to finance their futures. Then they take on 85% more debt than their white peers in order to get degrees and good jobs. They come to find that even with good credit and savings, their debt makes them less eligible for a mortgage, and the cycle continues. Back in January, she put a bid on a condo. Nayela was pre-approved and thought the lender would accept her current debt repayment plan.
How do you feel as you've watched your mom go through this process? Some degree of annoyed because when we did it the first time and we tried to get the condo and it looked really nice. They said they were gonna tell us on Friday. It was Friday. They said they're gonna tell us on Monday. And then they said no after all that stuff that happened for no apparent reason. We didn't get it.
It stretched out for 3 months to ultimately be told no.
So she's expanding the search, even considering a community called Oak Park outside the city of Chicago.
There has been documentaries about the racism there, but deciding between racism and violence, I choose racism.
It's a somewhat uniquely Black experience to say that out loud as part of your home search.
It's the only choice. When your income is at a certain level.
Doesn't like racism sometimes lead to violence? So basically it's violence and racism versus violence.
You're right.
This is Nayela's realtor and personal cheerleader, Nicole Wheatley. She works with low to moderate income, mostly Black clients. More than a third of her clients carry significant student debt. Due to strict rules put in place after the 2008 housing crisis, lenders are wary of her clients' debt-to-income ratios.
They've spent all these years in college and now they can't even get a home. And it doesn't matter if that person actually don't have to pay that back right now. It doesn't matter if they end up in a career like a nonprofit organization that 10 years down the line, they don't have to pay for the student loan. They only focus on right now, what is the situation, how much do you owe?
Do you think lenders need to change their practices?
I do understand that lenders have to just make sure that they go through a process to ensure that the buyer is able to afford the loan so that they're not in foreclosure. I get that, but they definitely have to look deeper into situations before they hit the denial button.
I have some white counterparts that they go out and they pick a house and we're at the housewarming party. It's just, why can't all of those things exist at the same time for me and my son? And I did everything right. I went to college, I got a job, and now I'm self-employed. Where's my American dream? You know, it's a nightmare.
I see Ashley Harrington of the Center for Responsible Lending and Rocky Andrews of the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. Harrington sees lenders as uniquely responsible. Andrews says current rules don't give lenders enough flexibility. It's no secret that students of color take on more debt, and then you add that to the historical wealth gap and discrimination in lending. Do you think that the mortgage industry has to play a special role to help Black aspiring homeowners get access to that dream?
Absolutely, they do need to. So when Congress passes these rules to encourage housing to those that have been left out, you need to bring in industry as partners in making those decisions so together they can come up with a solution that works and benefits everybody.
I think the lending industry definitely has a role to play. The discriminatory lending practice, use of risky mortgages and subprime mortgages and steering Black borrowers into those. Income-based repayment is 20 or 25 years of your life. That is not something we should expect for borrowers for higher education.
Nayela now has her eye on a home in Bronzeville, Chicago. You've been fighting for this home for a long time. What's keeping you going?
My sons are keeping me going. I want them to see me win, and I want them to see me go down swinging.
You don't think there's a point at which you'd give up?
Absolutely not. I will leave my sons a piece of America. I owe them that much. We did not get our 40 acres and a mule, but I am going to at least get a damn condo in Chicago.
Y'all, there is no other way to actually put that, guys, except for that's just Chicago. I mean, potential homeowners like myself still runs the same issue, and even though in Chicago it's still the whole thing of the disparity between lenders and just the fact they look at your debt income ratios, especially if you've been in college and you've racked up student debt. And let's be honest, for the professions we want, some of us are 100,000, 200,000 or higher into that, and that does I'll be honest with you, that does dismay you from actually wanting to pursue a house. But if you're like me, eventually you get tired of doing apartments. You really do. And so you start looking for a house. Or, if you and your significant other decide that you want to look for a house, then you've got to see about, you go through this whole process. And it can be draining. It can be emotionally defeating, especially the fact of the matter is, unless you're sitting on anywhere from 200 to 300 grand that you just have lying around, then it's not as bad as for you. But it is true, there is a disparity of mortgage lenders not actually giving out to those with a higher income debt ratio. And let's be honest, for a lot of people in the minority who had to use student loans to go to college, that does rack up. And you see the struggle that one woman has, which is getting approved, and the decisions she had to make were lenders. And I said, not to reiterate the story, but there were some lenders that sat there and said, well, would you be comfortable moving into this area that has high traffic, or they call it high police traffic, or just overall quote unquote bad neighborhoods? And she said no. She said, and think about it. Same here in my home state of Nashville, in my city of Nashville. There's places in Nashville I would not move into. Hell no. Just because the simple fact of the matter is, I understand that there's some areas that are just really just high areas of crime, low public things, such as loss of libraries, public parks, things of that nature. I just simply will not move into those areas. Now, are those areas in Nashville I would love to move into? Yes. But those are the ones that, like I said before, it's almost like the previous story of the woman who gave her babysitter's address for her child to go to a better school, because the school that her child was zoned for was not as advanced or would help her child as the one she really wanted her child to go to. We see houses in the same way. We see home ownership in the same way. We want a nice neighborhood. We want a backyard. We want areas to where our kids can go to great schools and things of that nature, and they exist. But the problem is, between you and home ownership, there's a mortgage lender that's going to look at your credit report and say, you've got about $80,000 in student loans. I'm concerned. Because that's just being honest. It is so strict about how the mortgage system works that honestly, a lot of people have sat there and said they're better off winning the lottery, and or having to choose. Like she sat there and said in the video, woman sat there and said in the video, she considered another location, but historically it's been known for its racism. And she says it is heartbreaking that you have to make a choice between racism or violence. That is utterly messed up that a parent has to make that decision. But again, it should tell us a lot about the American dream for a lot of us, because like I said before, not all of us are prepared. And I can go into a whole other step about the simple fact of the matter is, when it comes to minorities were not given a 400-year head start. But again, I can go into that, but I've already have, so we're just going to keep the ball rolling. What you guys say? Kelly, Trump has a warrant out for his arrest that goes into effect after his time in office. Yes, that is true. He does have a standing warrant out for him to arrive in court. So it'll be interesting to see if it ever gets followed through. But like I said, I'll be more confident about it if I knew Miss Obama was running, and that alone would make me feel great, because that would make Trump very freaking nervous. But moving right along, guys, before we get into our feel-good news story, unfortunately, because of the Paycheck Protection Program and other unemployment benefits that did expire as of the 1st of August, so 21 days later, we are now back up to more than 1 million claims and initial unemployment benefits, and that's not surprising. It is not surprising at all, because like I said, when you took away the payment, when the Paycheck Protection Program ran out of money for the third time because they gave money to corporations that didn't deserve it, and at the same time you stopped giving out the initial boost of the $600 a week on top of what people were getting from their unemployment to get by. Once those things disappeared, what did you expect was going to happen? Because again, I hate to say this, conservatives out there believe that if you pay an individual more, it will not entice them to go work. Well, we don't really need them to work for the simple fact of the matter, because of COVID-19, because the virus is still out there, because you can still spread it. So if people can still get paid and stay safely home with their folks, take it and run with it. Now, I understand for most businesses it hurts them, but again, that's where the Paycheck Protection Program was supposed to come into place, but you gave it to corporations. You didn't give it to small businesses. So again, we should not be surprised. The simple fact of the matter is that now the spike in jobless claims have kicked up again. Again, this goes back to what I've said. Until you actually handle the problem, this is not going to end. Until you actually increase minimum wage, until you actually start paying people just flat out $2,000 a month for them to get by, this will continue. Canada figured it out in less than a couple of weeks, and Canada's doing a whole lot better than we are. Matter of fact, every country out there is doing a whole lot better than we are. Why? Because every country followed instructions. U.S. just went miracle, and that's what we wound up with. But again, shouldn't be surprised by that. But like I said, that's really all the stories we got, guys. So we're going to go into our feel-good segment. Now, understand what I do on How the Frack We Got Here. I do cover a lot of stories that sometimes are not always good, sometimes downright heart-wrenching and full of doom and gloom. But it is the weekend. It is Saturday. Depending on where you are, it could be sunny, it could be hot. So you want to, have a, feel a good note, have some good vibes, and things of that nature. And I think I found 3 stories all surrounding students that I think will raise you up. And the first one is this kid right here. I'm gonna be honest. He makes me look lazy.
Opening a college acceptance letter. A surprise worth the wait.
It was a very good feel-good moment, and still is. And just blessed and thankful.
For Teron Richardson, it was a moment repeated 65 times.
How does your mom feel about all this?
She was more than proud and very excited for me.
The Indianapolis student with a hashtag no sleep in my schedule, a 4-sport athlete and Eagle Scout, class salutatorian, and an advocate against gun violence who worked a job too. Richardson's top choice, Howard University, where he plans to study astrophysics. A decisive win followed by a loss. No on-campus life thanks to COVID-19.
You just got to keep looking towards what the better is, or things will get better. You have to hold out hope.
A lesson for life, even before the first day of class. Katie Beck, NBC News.
What a terrific story.
65 colleges. Dude, he was a 4-star athlete, Eagle Scout, which for anybody that doesn't know is one of the most difficult things to get as a Boy Scout. And on top of that, he's into nonprofit organizations to stop the violence, and the man had a job. If this man ever has kids, they will never be able to compare hardships. But I have to give it to this young man. And the fact that he's going to Howard University to study astrophysics, hey, brother, salute. But I just love to see that's what makes me happy. Is that I love to see people, I see young minority kids, whether they're black, Hispanic, what have you. I love to see them succeed. And I love to see kids actually get accepted more, especially 65 colleges. I know his mom was going, ooh, thank you, Jesus. I can see that. My mom did the same thing. My mom did the same thing, and she said, like all black moms do, it's like, ooh, praise Lord, praise Lord. But anywho, but I just love that story. Just so the fact of the matter is, I just like to see kids that sit there and they don't accept Yale. They push forward is really what they do. Jason, on the Trump administration, $7 trillion has been spent in favor of the rich. What has the people gotten? A tax break of $1,600 a year from a 2017 tax bill, and now a $1,200 one-time payment. You're exactly right. And everybody keeps thinking it's going to be a second stimulus payment. I'm like, at this point, it's not, because Trump's going to use that Trump's going to pretty much use that to hold against people. So you're exactly right on that. But here's the next story I have, guys, about the Feel Good segment is really this one here. I love when communities come together to help people. And, doesn't matter if you know them or not. It's still a fact of the matter that it's still an act of kindness that goes a long way, which I thought this story was pretty cool.
A neighbor wanted to show a true act of kindness for a single mother and her son. This is a moment they'll never forget.
LaAdria Thompson has been worried sick about her son not having a laptop for school. Her son, Deshaun Thompson, is a sophomore at Jim Hill High School and did not receive a laptop from JPS after requesting one. After hearing about their story on 16 WAPT, Shirley and Marcus Webb decided to help.
Hey, y'all.
This is for you, Deshaun.
because we know you needed it, and we just felt compelled that, you know, we had to make sure that you got your laptop so that you can go to school.
Out of the kindness of their heart, the Webb family tracked down Deshaun and gave him a laptop.
Her wanting to help me, that took a lot of burden off of me because I was worried about my son failing in school.
Without a laptop, Deshaun would have to use a workbook without proper instruction from a teacher. His mother worried about him falling behind at a crucial moment in his education.
Because if not, I probably would have failed the first semester, you know, never know.
You know, when you're learning, you know, you need a teacher. And so, you know, I didn't want him to have to struggle like that.
So I don't know what classes I've missed and what grades they have, if they even put in grades or homework they've set in, notes that they've took. I don't have those notes, so I know that I'm behind now. But I'm just glad that I'm not far behind. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that they came in and, you know, lended me the laptop.
An act of kindness from a neighbor that the Thompson family will never forget.
Yeah, so much. You're so welcome.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said before, it takes a village to raise a child, and let's be honest, there's not too much of a village mentality out there anymore. But it's nice to see in some neighborhoods that if you see someone struggling, or you see a child that needs help, that somebody is going to be able to help them and actually pretty much make a positive impact. And that's what I actually like about that. But the last one I have here, guys, you've probably seen this video out here, probably on social media, things of that nature. I just want to give these two ladies credit, because even with the fact of virtual remote learning out there, they still sat there and said they're going to make a way for it to be fun and inviting for the kids to come back to school, even though school should not be open right now. But hey, they're at least managed to make a way. But again, if you've seen this video, you're going to know what I'm talking about.
A couple of Georgia teachers who have become complete internet sensations. The pair made a rap video to welcome their students back to the virtual classroom. They wrote the lyrics set to the theme tune of Jack Harlow's song, What's Poppin'? We love that song. We were dancing to it earlier. And listed some of the school's cheer squad as backup dancers. And what they ended up with, pure social media gold, even with more than 250,000 views so far this morning. Take a look.
Brand new year and I'm locked in. Far as this teaching go, I am unreachable. I'm number one in your top 10. Miss Williams, been popping. 2020 new school, you're dropping. No COVID-19, ain't worried about a thing when it come to me, ain't no stopping.
What's poppin'? Miss Evans on the beat, so tap in. You got options, but you better pass my class, no flopping. Gon' log in every day, every morning I'm watching. Yeah, we virtual and you know it's up, so we about to take it up a notch. Yeah, my role is the best, no comparing.
And we have those two incredible teachers, Adriana Williams and Callie Evans, joining us live from Monroe Comprehensive High School in Albany, Georgia this morning. Good morning to both of you. And I got to say, if you don't want to teach, that rap career looks like it would be ripe and ready to go. But this video is absolutely, it's great. I see why so many people are in love with it. But how did you come up with the idea?
Well, actually, the idea came about 4 years ago when it was my first year teaching. And instead of doing a back to school rap, I actually did a end of the school year rap to just celebrate my first year of being successful as a first year teacher. That following year, Mrs. Evans joined me at Monroe. We were already friends prior to her coming. So when she came, I was so excited, and I wanted to kind of keep the raps going, to keep the morale of the school up. So I asked Miss Evans if she could join me in the next school's rap, and she was down. And from that, it was history.
Well, you guys are a perfect duo. So we know you wrote the lyrics. What's the message that you guys wanted to send to the students with this song?
Well, because Albany was impacted dramatically because of COVID-19, we wanted to basically just motivate not only our students, our teachers, but our community. We have a lot of people that lost their lives, and I'm sure the students were discouraged to even come to school in those circumstances. So we wanted to just show them how important it is to overcome adversity, to push through no matter what. And no matter where you're from, you can always be motivated and take it to the top.
That is,
and not even just for the students, but for the teachers as well. We needed that encouragement and uplifting as well, just as much as the student.
Yeah, and I think that gets lost sometimes. Teachers need the encouragement as well. But were you both surprised by the response that it's gotten?
Yes.
It's a total big shock to know that we have done this for me 4 years, Miss Evans 3, and to see the feedback that we get every year. But for this reason, this video, I cannot believe the responses and the feedback and all the social media outlets that have posted us. It is mind blowing.
Okay, we know that you said it to What's Poppin' by Jack Harlow. Do you know if he's seen it?
He has seen it. He actually commented on my video saying, "Hey, Miss Williams." So that was an amazing feeling to see that he's seen that video.
All right, well, since we know he's seen it, how about we find out what Jack Harlow thinks about this video? Because wait for it, ladies, right now, the multi-platinum selling artist, he's joining us live right here. All right, Jack, what do you want to say to these two amazing teachers, Ms. Williams and Miss Evans? Good morning.
Wow. I can't even tell y'all how amazing y'all are. Good morning. How you guys doing?
Hey. Good morning. How are you?
We hear you have a little surprise for them.
Yeah, well, you know, I grew up with teachers that had a huge influence on me my whole life, and it stuck with me. So what y'all provide to society is invaluable. So I can't thank you enough for doing the job you guys do. So just as a small token of my appreciation, I wanted to give both of you to $1,000 gift cards just to treat yourself to whatever you guys want. I really appreciate y'all doing what y'all do. So thank you so much, and thank you for making my song better. Y'all killed me on that song. Y'all killed me.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, thank you so much.
I love you guys.
Love you too.
What did you think of the song, Jack?
Oh, they killed it. It's better than the original.
Well, you guys are a winning combo. Thank you all for being here this morning. Keep up the good work. Good luck in this next coming school year. You guys stay safe.
And again, that what I thought was pretty cool. Just to the fact of the matter, like I said, I will never stop saying how important educators are. Educators have a big impact on kids as they grow up. I know they had it on me. You heard it from Jack Harlow, how much they had an impact on it. And you have teachers out there like that, multiple teachers out there like that, who have that kind of influence on kids. And you got to think, that is the whole point of why I keep saying educators don't get what they need. They don't. I mean, they need to be paid more. They need to be given more resources. If the Department of Education and the U.S. Postal Service got the same type of funding that the Pentagon gets, imagine the society that we have if more is invested in education, if more is invested in education in the mail service than it is in war. But again, the song is pretty banging, though. I have to give it that. But that's really all that we got, guys, for this show. So I do thank everybody for watching. Some shameless plugging before I do get out of here. I am not the only cat that actually has podcasts. I'll start with my buddy Vaughn, ABigBZA, who's watching this. Hopefully, hopefully sending me a vid soon on his shows, because I always want to put a face with his shows. Of course, ABigBZA, he has a couple of shows of his own. I'll start with the first one, the VST, which is his solo intercast, and which is a news podcast. That news can be music, it needs to be video games, news can be trailers, and trust me, he is the king of weird trailers. I can't really talk about that because he did see a trailer. He did show a trailer for a horror movie that I'm going to watch. Unfortunately, it won't be out until September 11th. So, I mean, of all the times you want to pick a movie date, you pick September 11th. But again, I'll be watching that. He'll probably be watching that with me on that once that comes out. But his show's interactive just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, which is right now on a sort of a hiatus, but you can go onto his Facebook page, ABigBZA, and be able to watch previous episodes of Rhythmness. As you've seen us as a group go over new music and sometimes old music, and have a discussion over them. What we liked, what was terrible. I think we all agreed on Jacquees, though. I think we all agreed on him that day. But like I said, differences in taste in music actually leads to camaraderie, and that's what he's about. Also, random as fuck. Random as fuck is a pool of randomness we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some bills make you think, some bills make you cry, but he always does the videos to a theme, and they're always unforgettable. He's kind of stuck to kind of doing that on Tuesdays, but check out his Facebook at ABigBZA to see when his times are as far as when he'll go live. And of course, let's see, I covered that, Rhythmness, random as fuck. Oh yeah, and Funkin' Around, which Funkin' Around is kind of I like to say it's him creating music, because I tell Vaughn all the time he is musically talented. I keep on saying once I get a piano, because I've always had this dream of learning to play the piano, and Vaughn plays it very well, and I was going to ask him one day to teach me how to play piano, because piano and guitar are two of the instruments that I love, but I still don't have the musical aptitude to figure out for myself, and I'm hoping Vaughn can help me out with at least one of those. But anyway, about my buddy Mom. So yeah, all of his shows can be found on his Facebook page at absvza. or on all social medias. Definitely give him a like, share, and repeat once you see him. And of course, my other boy Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, also is on hiatus with his show To Be Determined. But you can go under his Facebook page at Thomas Reed or his YouTube page at 2TBD to see previous episodes of To Be Determined. As you can tell from Thomas Reed on Facebook, he is a fitness nut. All he does is work out, but he loves to help people. But he loves to help people who are trying to change themselves for the better, and will definitely help you in getting there, because he believes that everybody should be Saiyans. If you know what that is, then kudos. But now, as far as for myself, I do have a couple of shows. Of course, every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is my Burned Out podcast, which is my IT storytelling podcast, in which I tell stories from my experience as an IT person with folks of the general public. If you think it's funny, you probably will be. If you don't think it's funny, it's probably about you. But either way, it's all the way entertaining. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is the current show that you're watching right now, How the Frack We Got Here. A little bit later tonight, between 7 to 9 p.m., will be the Awfulness podcast, the podcast that does go there. And what I mean by there is, we talk about anything and everything. There is no subject too grand, no subject too extreme we will not talk about, but simply we're trying to prove a point that anything can be talked about as long as you have the right-minded people. Of course, on Sunday between 7 and 9 will be the Get Bit podcast. That is my Blur podcast, in which I cover everything from video games, sci-fi, anime, some music, some new things in television, especially with DC fandom that's actually going on right now, in which we'll cover the news that comes out of there. We'll all be on Sunday at 7 to 9 p.m., of course, on this channel as well. All of my shows can be found on my Facebook page at William Buchanan, or on their own Facebook and YouTube pages. Whether on Facebook or YouTube, you can look up the Burned Out podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, the Offense podcast, and Get Bit, that is GITBIT, to be able to see every podcast that I've done thus far. That also being said, guys, I do want to thank you all who all poked their heads in, who watched. I certainly appreciate it. And if you're watching this on the playback, please comment as if it's live, because I still want to get you guys' opinions. And like I said about How the Frack We Got Here, we are not trying to do anything else but to inform. There are too many stations out there that follow certain agendas, that follow certain protocols, that want to spoon feed you information in the simple sense of the matter of having you do their way of thinking. This is not what we do. We simply give you the facts. I still may give my personal opinion, but it's only my personal opinion of the facts. The facts that you will still receive, I hope to inform you, to allow you to make up your own mind for yourself. Because that's exactly how the news was at one point. It was all about informing you and allowing you to make up your own mind. Because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So I thank you all guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Please, oh please, keep in mind that COVID-19 is still out there. Wear a mask. We've tried the other way. It doesn't work. Wear a mask. Be safe. If you're sick, stay home. Try to avoid large crowds. Resist the urge to go to bars unless you absolutely need a drink. And if you need a drink, go to a liquor store. At the same time, guys, let's be wary for those who are kids, who are elderly, because they are more susceptible to COVID-19 than the rest of us are. At the same time, thank an essential worker today if you see them. Thank a doctor, thank a nurse, a doctor's aides, a nurse's aides, environmental people, people that work in hospitals. Thank a trucker if you see them. Thank those people in the grocery stores. Thank those people that work in the United States Postal Service system. Thank those that work in UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon, all these other areas in which some people unfortunately have to make a choice between having to go out here and work to keep the lights on and the place humming. Those guys deserve a lot more than what they're getting, but at least you can say thank you. And another way to say thank you, wear a damn mask. Aside from that, guys, thank you all for watching. I hope to see you all in the next one. I'm out. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.